My name is Madison Cooper. I'm 32 years old, and last Christmas morning, I woke up to the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard: absolute silence on my $5 million ranch in Montana. No family drama, no passive-aggressive comments, no walking on eggshells around my parents' golden child expectations. Just peace, luxury, and the sweet taste of revenge served colder than the December snow outside. But the phone calls that started that evening? They changed everything I thought I knew about family loyalty and made me question if blood really is thicker than water. Hey everyone! Before we dive into this wild family drama that literally changed my entire perspective on what family means, I need to know, where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments because I love connecting with viewers worldwide. And if you're ready for a story that has more twists than a mountain road, hit that like button and subscribe because trust me, this Christmas revenge story is going to take you on an emotional roller coaster that'll make you question everything about family dynamics. Let's get into it. Growing up in the Cooper family meant understanding your place in an invisible hierarchy, and mine was always at the bottom. My parents, Robert and Linda Cooper, made their fortune in real estate development across the Pacific Northwest, building an empire worth over $50 million. But success came with strings attached, strings that somehow never seemed to reach me. My older brother Marcus was the crown prince of the Cooper dynasty. Football captain in high school, business degree from Stanford, married his college sweetheart Sarah right after graduation, and produced two picture-perfect grandchildren by age 28. He joined Dad's company immediately and was being groomed as the heir apparent. Every family gathering centered around Marcus's achievements, his children's milestones, his wife's charity work, his perfect suburban life in Seattle. Then there was me, the family disappointment who chose art over business, moved to Montana to pursue photography, and had the audacity to buy my own ranch with money I'd earned independently through my wildlife photography career. I'd built my success shooting for National Geographic, major outdoor brands, and selling limited edition prints to collectors worldwide. My work hung in galleries from New York to Los Angeles, but none of that mattered to my parents. The warning signs had always been there, but I dismissed them as typical family dynamics. Like how Marcus's birthday parties were elaborate affairs with extended family, while mine were quiet dinners if remembered at all. How my photography exhibitions were nice hobbies, while Marcus's quarterly business reports were family celebrations. How my ranch was seen as me hiding away in the mountains, while Marcus's McMansion was the perfect family home. The real wake-up call came last Thanksgiving. I'd driven 8 hours from Montana to Seattle, bringing my famous maple bourbon sweet potato casserole and gifts for everyone. The moment I walked in, the energy shifted. Marcus and Sarah exchanged looks, Dad barely looked up from his newspaper, and Mom gave me one of those forced smiles that never reached her eyes. Dinner conversation revolved entirely around Marcus's latest business acquisition, Sarah's promotion at her marketing firm, and the kids' achievements in school and sports. When I tried to share news about my upcoming gallery showing in Denver, Dad literally changed the subject mid-sentence to ask Marcus about his golf handicap. But the final blow came during dessert. Mom was discussing Christmas plans, and I assumed I was included like always. That's when she dropped the bomb with the casual cruelty that only family can deliver. "Oh, Madison, about Christmas," she said, not even looking at me while cutting pie. "We're keeping it small this year. Just immediate family. You understand." I felt like I'd been slapped. "I am immediate family, Mom. You know what I mean, honey. Marcus and Sarah need space for the children, and your lifestyle choices have been, well, concerning. We think it's better if you spend the holidays focusing on yourself." The room fell silent except for the clink of forks on plates. Marcus stared at his dessert, Sarah suddenly became fascinated with her phone, and Dad continued eating as if nothing had happened. I was being excluded from Christmas, by my own parents, because I didn't fit their vision of the perfect daughter. I left that night without saying goodbye, driving through the darkness back to Montana with tears streaming down my face and a rage building in my chest that I'd never felt before. The 8-hour drive gave me plenty of time to think, and by the time I reached my ranch, I'd made a decision that would change everything. If my parents wanted to keep Christmas immediate family only, then I'd show them exactly what family meant. I'd host my own Christmas celebration, one that would be legendary, unforgettable, and prove that blood isn't the only thing that makes a family. The next morning, I woke up in my master bedroom overlooking the snow-covered Montana mountains, and for the first time in months, I felt genuinely excited about Christmas. If my parents thought excluding me would break me, they were about to learn they'd made the biggest mistake of their lives. My ranch wasn't just a home, it was a statement. 5,000 acres of pristine Montana wilderness, a custom-built log mansion with 8 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, a commercial-grade kitchen, and entertainment spaces that could host a small wedding. I designed every inch of it myself, from the floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the mountain views to the great room with its massive stone fireplace. This place was my sanctuary, my pride and joy, and now it was going to be the stage for the most epic Christmas celebration my family would never forget. I started making lists. If my parents wanted to exclude me, then I'd invite everyone else. And I mean everyone. First on my list was my chosen family, the people who'd supported me when my biological family couldn't be bothered. There was Jake Martinez, my business partner and closest friend, who'd helped me build my photography career from nothing. His wife Elena and their 3 kids had become my surrogate family over the years. Then there was Mrs. Henderson, my elderly neighbor who'd brought me soup when I had the flu and always remembered my birthday. She lived alone since her husband passed and spent every Christmas watching old movies by herself. My photography crew deserved to be included too. Tom and Riley, my assistants who'd traveled the world with me, capturing breathtaking shots in dangerous conditions. They were both from broken families themselves and usually spent holidays working. My gallery representative, Patricia, was recently divorced and dreading her first Christmas alone. My ranch foreman, Carlos, and his family had nowhere to go since they were new to the area. But then I had a wicked idea. What if I invited the people my parents had wronged over the years? The business partners Dad had screwed over, the employees he'd fired unfairly, the competitors he'd destroyed with dirty tactics. What if I gave them all a Christmas they'd never forget, while simultaneously showing them the life I'd built without my family's help? I remembered David Chin, an architect who'd designed several properties for my parents' company before Dad found a way to breach their contract and avoid paying the final invoice. David had lost his house fighting the legal battle. There was Jennifer Walsh, Mom's former best friend who'd been cut off completely after she divorced her husband. Apparently divorced women weren't good influences on the family image. And Marcus's ex-girlfriend Amy, who he dated for 4 years before dropping her the moment he met Sarah. Amy had been devastated, and my parents had treated her like she never existed. The guest list grew longer and more delicious with every addition. I invited my college friends who my parents had always deemed unsuitable, former employees who'd been treated poorly by the family business, and neighbors from my childhood who'd witnessed my parents' true colors over the years. I even invited my high school guidance counselor, Mrs. Patterson, who'd fought for me to pursue art school against my parents' wishes. The invitations were works of art themselves. I designed custom photo cards featuring stunning shots of my ranch in winter, with elegant script announcing, "Madison Cooper requests the pleasure of your company for a Christmas celebration you'll never forget." Each invitation was personalized with a handwritten note explaining why their presence would mean the world to me. But the masterpiece was the Christmas menu. I hired Sarah Kim, a James Beard Award-nominated chef who'd been blacklisted by my parents' country club after a ridiculous complaint Mom had made about her attitude. Sarah jumped at the chance to create a feast that would put every Cooper family Christmas to shame. We planned a 7-course dinner featuring Wagyu beef, fresh lobster flown in from Maine, truffle mac and cheese, and desserts that looked like edible art installations. I arranged for professional photographers to document everything, not for social media, but for my own satisfaction. I wanted proof of the incredible Christmas I was having without my family. I hired a small string quartet, rented heaters for the outdoor spaces, and arranged for a shuttle service to bring guests from the airport. The decorations alone cost more than most people's annual salaries. I brought in professional designers to transform my already stunning ranch into a winter wonderland. 20-foot Fraser fir trees in the great room, thousands of twinkling lights, garlands made from fresh pine and silver ribbons, and centerpieces featuring white roses, baby's breath, and cascading silver ornaments. 2 weeks before Christmas, I sent a group text to my parents and Marcus. Hope you have a wonderful Christmas with your immediate family. I'll be hosting my own celebration at the ranch. Should be quite memorable. I didn't expect a response, and I didn't get one. But I knew the message had been received, and that was enough. They'd excluded me from Christmas, so I was creating my own. The only question was whether they'd figure out what I was really doing before it was too late. The RSVPs started pouring in immediately, and every single yes felt like a small victory. People were excited, grateful, and many confessed they'd been dreading the holidays because they had nowhere special to go. David Chin called personally to thank me, his voice thick with emotion as he explained how much the invitation meant after the difficult year he'd had. Jennifer Walsh sent a bouquet of flowers with a note saying it was the first time she'd felt excited about Christmas since her divorce. But the most surprising response came from Amy, Marcus's ex-girlfriend. She called me directly, something that would have been scandalous in my family's eyes since we'd been forbidden from maintaining relationships with Marcus's former girlfriends. "Madison, I can't believe you remembered me," she said, her voice filled with genuine warmth. "After what happened with Marcus, I thought your whole family hated me." "Amy, my family's capacity for cruelty never surprises me, but their lack of loyalty always does. You were part of our lives for 4 years. You came to every holiday, every birthday, every family vacation. Then Marcus met Sarah, and suddenly you were persona non grata. That was never okay with me." What Amy told me during that call changed everything I thought I knew about my brother's character. Apparently, Marcus hadn't just moved on from Amy. He'd actively destroyed her reputation in their social circle, spreading lies about her being unstable and demanding. When she'd tried to maintain friendships with people they'd known as a couple, Marcus had systematically turned them against her. The man my parents praised as the golden child had shown a vindictive streak that made my blood boil. He told everyone I was stalking him, Amy confessed. I wasn't. I just wanted closure, an explanation for why 4 years meant nothing to him. But he painted me as this crazy ex-girlfriend, and people believed him because he's Marcus Cooper. I'd always known my brother was my parents' favorite, but I'd never realized he was capable of such calculated cruelty. This revelation added a new dimension to my Christmas celebration. It wasn't just about proving I could create a better holiday than my family. It was about giving people like Amy a platform to reclaim their dignity. The preparations intensified as Christmas approached. My ranch became a hub of activity as vendors, decorators, and caterers transformed the space into something magical. But the real magic was happening in the phone calls and text messages I exchanged with my guests. These people weren't just attending a party. They were joining a rebellion against the Cooper family's toxic dynamics. Mrs. Henderson called to ask if she could bring her famous apple pies. "I've been making them for 60 years, she said, "but I've never had anyone to make them for since my Harold passed." David Chin offered to design a photo backdrop for guests, using reclaimed materials from a project my father had sabotaged. Jennifer Walsh volunteered to coordinate with other guests to ensure everyone had transportation to the ranch. The sense of community building around this Christmas celebration was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. These weren't random strangers thrown together. They were people who'd been wronged, overlooked, or dismissed by my family, and now they were coming together to create something beautiful. 3 days before Christmas, I received an unexpected visitor. Carlos, my ranch foreman, knocked on my door with a concerned expression that immediately put me on alert. "Madison, there's been a black SUV parked at the end of your driveway for the past 2 hours. Driver hasn't gotten out, just sitting there watching the house." My heart skipped. In a town as small as ours, strangers were noticed, and someone surveilling my property was definitely not normal. I grabbed my binoculars and confirmed Carlos's observation. A sleek black Escalade with Seattle plates was indeed positioned where they could observe everyone coming and going from my ranch. That evening, my phone rang. Mom's number flashed on the screen, and for a moment, I considered not answering. But curiosity won out. "Madison, we need to talk," she said without preamble. "About what, Mom?" "I thought you were keeping Christmas small this year. Immediate family only, remember." "Don't be smart with me. We know what you're doing, and it needs to stop." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the Montana winter. "I'm not doing anything except hosting a Christmas dinner for people I care about." "Since when is that a crime?" "You're trying to embarrass this family. We know who you've invited." "David Chin? Jennifer Walsh? That unstable girl Marcus used to date? This is clearly some kind of revenge scheme, and we won't tolerate it." The fact that they knew my guest list meant they'd been investigating, possibly following my guests or monitoring my communications. The black SUV suddenly made perfect sense. They'd hired someone to spy on me. "Let me get this straight," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "You excluded me from Christmas because you wanted to keep it immediate family only, but now you're upset that I'm hosting my own celebration with people who actually want to spend time with me? Make it make sense, Mom." "This isn't about Christmas, Madison. This is about you trying to damage our reputation by associating with people who have grudges against us. We built this family's success through careful relationship management, and we won't let your petty jealousy destroy that." I hung up without responding. They were scared. Good. They should be. Christmas Eve arrived with a fresh snowfall that made my ranch look like a scene from a holiday movie. As I stood in my kitchen at 6 in the morning, sipping coffee and watching the sunrise paint the mountains pink and gold, I felt a peace I'd never experienced during any Cooper family Christmas. Today wasn't just about hosting a dinner, it was about reclaiming my power and proving that the family you choose can be infinitely more meaningful than the one you're born into. The first guests arrived at noon, and the energy was immediately different from any family gathering I'd ever attended. David Chin walked through my front door with tears in his eyes, taking in the soaring ceilings, custom woodwork, and panoramic mountain views. "Madison, this place is incredible," he said, his voice filled with genuine awe. "You built this yourself?" "Every detail," I replied proudly. "Designed it, managed the construction, furnished it, and paid for it with money I earned photographing the wildlife on this very land." Mrs. Henderson arrived next, clutching her famous apple pies and marveling at the professional kitchen. "Honey, this is bigger than the restaurant where I worked for 30 years, she said, laughing. "And about 1,000 times prettier." As more guests arrived, the atmosphere became electric with genuine joy and connection. Amy walked in looking stunning in a deep green dress that brought out her eyes, and I could see her confidence returning with every compliment she received from other guests. Jennifer Walsh had brought her teenage daughter, who immediately hit it off with Elena Martinez's kids. But the moment that truly set the tone came when Tom and Riley, my photography assistants, set up a slideshow showcasing my work from around the world. As images of African elephants, Arctic wolves, and mountain landscapes filled the massive screen in my great room, guests gasped and applauded. These people were seeing my achievements celebrated for the first time in a family-like setting, and their genuine pride in my success was overwhelming. The 7-course dinner was a masterpiece that put every Cooper family feast to shame. Chef Sarah Kim had outdone herself, creating dishes that were both visually stunning and absolutely delicious. As guests savored Wagyu beef with truffle sauce and laughed over shared stories, I realized something profound was happening. This wasn't just a dinner party, it was the birth of a new kind of family, one built on mutual respect, shared experiences, and genuine care for each other's well-being. During the main course, David Chin stood up with his wine glass, requesting everyone's attention. "I want to make a toast," he said, his voice carrying across the room. "Madison, you've created something magical here tonight. After the year I've had, dealing with legal battles and financial stress because of how your family's business treated me, I honestly didn't think I'd ever feel joy during the holidays again. But being here, surrounded by people who understand what it means to be overlooked or dismissed, I feel like I'm part of something special." The room erupted in agreement, and suddenly everyone was sharing their stories. Jennifer Walsh talked about how isolating divorce had been, especially when mutual friends chose sides. Amy spoke about the difficulty of rebuilding her reputation after Marcus's character assassination. One by one, these people who'd been wounded by my family were finding healing in each other's company. That's when my phone started buzzing incessantly. Text after text from my parents and Marcus, growing increasingly frantic as the evening progressed. I ignored them initially, but their persistence was becoming disruptive to the celebration. Can you believe this is happening to our family? The way some people choose revenge over forgiveness never fails to amaze me. But watching these people find joy together despite everything they've been through, that's when you know you're witnessing something real. If you're enjoying this story of chosen family over blood family, hit that notification bell because the calls that started coming in around 9 p.m. were about to change everything I thought I knew about my parents' true nature. The calls began as guests were enjoying dessert. My parents' number flashed on my screen repeatedly, then Marcus's, then unknown numbers that I suspected were their lawyers or business associates. I finally stepped outside onto my deck to answer, not wanting to disturb my guests. Madison, you need to end this right now. Dad's voice was tight with anger. We know exactly who you've invited and why you've invited them. This is a calculated attack on our family's reputation, and we won't stand for it. It's a Christmas dinner, Dad. Since when is having dinner with friends an attack? Don't play dumb. David Chin has been posting photos on social media showing off your ranch, calling it his best Christmas ever. Jennifer Walsh is telling people this is what real family looks like. You're actively encouraging people to disparage us, and it stops now. I looked through the windows at my great room, where my guests were laughing, sharing stories, and taking photos with Mrs. Henderson's grandchildren who'd driven up from Billings to surprise her. This wasn't about attacking my family. It was about celebrating the people who'd shown me more love and support than my biological family ever had. Here's what's going to happen, Dad continued. You're going to end this dinner, send everyone home, and publicly apologize for this stunt. In return, we'll consider including you in future family events. The audacity was breathtaking. They'd excluded me from Christmas, spied on me, and were now demanding I apologize for hosting my own celebration. But what happened next revealed the true depths of their desperation and cruelty. If you don't comply, Mom's voice joined the call, we'll be forced to take legal action. We've documented evidence of you using our family connections to harm our business relationships. David Chen's social media posts could be construed as defamatory, and we'll hold you responsible for facilitating that. They were threatening to sue me for hosting a Christmas dinner. The family that had raised me, that I'd loved despite their favoritism and criticism, was willing to destroy me legally because I dared to find happiness outside their control. That's when the evening took a turn that none of us saw coming, and the phone calls that followed would expose secrets that had been hidden for decades. Just as I was about to hang up on my parents' legal threats, Amy appeared on the deck beside me, her face pale in the moonlight. She was holding her phone with a strange expression that immediately caught my attention. Madison, you need to hear this, she whispered. I just got a call from someone named Patricia Chin, David's sister. She said she's been trying to reach you all evening, but your line's been busy. I looked at my phone and realized I'd missed several calls from an unknown number while arguing with my parents. Amy handed me her phone, and Patricia Chen's voice came through with an urgency that made my blood run cold. Madison, I don't know if you remember me from when David was working with your parents, but I've been trying to reach you for hours. There's something you need to know about why your parents are so desperate to stop tonight's dinner. My parents were still talking on my phone, making increasingly ridiculous threats, but I muted them to listen to Patricia. My brother never told you the full story about what happened with your parents' company. It wasn't just a contract dispute. They stole his designs for the Riverside development and used them without permission. But that's not the worst part. I work in forensic accounting, and while helping David with his legal case, I discovered something that could destroy your parents' entire empire. The world seemed to stop spinning. Through my great room windows, I could see my guests enjoying the best Christmas of their lives, completely unaware that everything was about to change. Your parents have been using their development company to launder money for over a decade, Patricia continued. Fake construction costs, inflated contractor payments, shell companies that exist only on paper. The Riverside project alone involved over $3 million in fraudulent transactions. I have documentation of everything. I unmuted my parents' call and heard them still making threats, but their voices seemed distant now, like they were coming from another world. Patricia's revelation explained everything: why they were so desperate to control their reputation, why they'd hired someone to spy on my ranch, why they were threatening legal action over a Christmas dinner. "Patricia, why are you telling me this?" I managed to ask. "Because David mentioned you were having everyone over tonight, including people your parents have wronged. If they're threatening you over this dinner, it's because they're terrified of what might happen if all their victims start comparing stories. They can't afford to have their reputation questioned right now, not with federal investigators already sniffing around their recent projects." Federal investigators. My parents weren't just worried about embarrassment, they were potentially facing criminal charges, and my Christmas gathering represented a nightmare scenario where all their victims might connect the dots. I looked at my muted phone where my parents were probably still ranting, then back at Amy, who'd heard every word of Patricia's call. Her eyes were wide with understanding. "That's why Marcus destroyed my reputation so thoroughly," Amy said quietly. "It wasn't just about moving on. I knew too much about their family business. I helped Marcus with accounting coursework in college, and I'd seen some of their company documents when we were together. They couldn't risk me asking questions later." Everything clicked into place. My exclusion from Christmas wasn't about lifestyle choices or family dynamics, it was about control. As long as I was isolated from the people my parents had wronged, those people remained isolated from each other. But bringing them all together in one place, treating them like family, encouraging them to share their stories, that was dangerous to my parents in ways I'd never imagined. I hung up on my parents mid-sentence and called David over. When I explained what his sister had told me, his face went through a series of emotions: shock, anger, and finally, grim satisfaction. "I knew there was more to it than just a contract dispute," he said. "The amounts never made sense, and some of the subcontractors they claimed to use didn't even exist. But I thought it was just incompetence, not deliberate fraud." Word spread quickly through my guests about Patricia's revelation. Jennifer Walsh revealed that her ex-husband had been one of the fake contractors my parents used for money laundering. That's why they'd cut her off when she divorced him. Several other guests had similar stories of business dealings with my parents that hadn't made sense at the time, but now fit a pattern of financial manipulation. By 10 p.m., my Christmas dinner had transformed into something unprecedented. Instead of just sharing stories of how my family had wronged them, my guests were comparing notes about a potential criminal enterprise. And they were doing it in my beautiful ranch, surrounded by evidence of the success I'd built independently of my parents' corruption. That's when the really desperate phone calls started coming in. Marcus called first, his voice shaking with panic. "Madison, you have to shut this down. Whatever people are saying about the family business, it's all lies and misunderstandings. You're going to destroy everything we've worked for." "We, Marcus? I don't recall being included in the family business. In fact, I was explicitly told my lifestyle choices made me unsuitable for family functions. This is bigger than Christmas dinner. You don't understand what you're doing." But I understood perfectly. For the first time in my 32 years, I had real power over my parents. They'd spent my entire life making me feel like the family disappointment, but now they needed me to protect them from the consequences of their own actions. The final call of the evening came from an unknown number just after midnight, as my guests were finally heading home after the most incredible Christmas celebration any of us had ever experienced. Madison Cooper. The voice was unfamiliar, professional. "Yes, who's this?" "Agent Sarah Martinez with the FBI Financial Crimes Division. We understand you hosted a gathering tonight that included several individuals with business connections to your parents' company. We'd like to schedule a meeting with you as soon as possible." The day after Christmas dawned gray and cold, matching the sobering reality of what my Christmas celebration had unleashed. Agent Martinez arrived at my ranch at 8 a.m. sharp, accompanied by Agent Thompson from the Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. As I served coffee in the same great room where we'd celebrated the night before, I couldn't help but notice the irony. My parents' attempts to stop this gathering had instead created the exact situation they'd been desperately trying to avoid. "Ms. Cooper, "We want to be clear that you're not under investigation," Agent Martinez began, her manner professional but not unfriendly. "However, several individuals who attended your dinner last night have come forward with information that corroborates our ongoing investigation into Cooper Development Corporation. I learned that the FBI had been building a case against my parents' company for 8 months. Patricia Chen's discovery of the money laundering scheme had triggered the initial investigation, but they needed more evidence and witness cooperation to build a solid case. My Christmas dinner had inadvertently provided both. David Chen has agreed to turn over all the documentation his sister compiled," Agent Thompson explained. "Jennifer Walsh's ex-husband kept records of the fake contractor payments because he suspected something wasn't right. 3 other guests from last night have similar evidence. What we couldn't accomplish in months of investigation, your dinner party achieved in one evening." The agents explained that my parents weren't just facing financial crimes charges. The money laundering was connected to a larger investigation into construction industry corruption spanning multiple states. Cooper Development Corporation was allegedly the linchpin in a scheme involving falsified environmental impact reports, bribes to local officials, and the systematic defrauding of federal housing programs. "Your brother Marcus is likely to face charges as well," Agent Martinez said gently. "He's been the operations manager for the company for 5 years, and it's impossible that he was unaware of the extent of the fraudulent activities." As the agents left with my promise to cooperate fully with their investigation, I felt a strange mixture of vindication and sadness. My parents had excluded me from Christmas to protect their criminal enterprise, but their cruelty had backfired spectacularly. By rejecting me, they'd lost control over the narrative and allowed their victims to find each other. The phone calls from my family resumed immediately after the FBI visit, but now they carried a different tone. Gone were the legal threats and demands for apologies. Instead, I heard desperation and bargaining. "Madison, please," Mom's voice was barely recognizable. "We can work this out as a family. You don't understand the full situation, and neither do those people you invited. There are explanations for everything." "Mom, federal agents just left my house. They have documentation, witness testimony, and 8 months of investigation. What explanation could possibly justify money laundering? We never meant for anyone to get hurt. The business was struggling after the 2008 recession, and we made some poor decisions to keep the company afloat. But we're not criminals, Madison. We're your family." The word family now felt like a weapon they were trying to use against me. For 32 years, they'd wielded it to control my behavior, minimize my achievements, and exclude me from their inner circle. Now that they needed my help, suddenly I was family again. Marcus called next, and his approach was even more manipulative. "Madison, I know we haven't always been close, but I need you to understand what this means. If Mom and Dad go to prison, what happens to Sarah and the kids? They're innocent in all of this. You'd be destroying your nephew and niece's lives. Marcus, you've been operations manager for 5 years. The FBI thinks you knew about the money laundering. Are you innocent in all this?" The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. Marcus had been complicit from the beginning, possibly even the architect of some of the schemes. His perfect life, his rapid promotion within the company, his position as the golden child, it was all built on criminal activity. "Look, maybe I knew some things weren't completely above board," he finally admitted. "But I was protecting the family business. Everything I did was to secure our future, to make sure the Cooper name meant something." "The Cooper name does mean something now, Marcus. It means fraud, money laundering, and corruption. Congratulations on that legacy." As the day progressed, the ripple effects of my Christmas dinner continued to spread. David Chen called to thank me and update me on his cooperation with the FBI. Jennifer Walsh had connected with 3 other divorced wives of men involved in the scheme, creating an unexpected support network for the legal battles ahead. Amy had been contacted by the authorities as well, since her relationship with Marcus might have given her access to incriminating information. "Madison, I want you to know something," Amy said during our call. "Last night was the first time in 3 years that I felt like myself again. Not the crazy ex-girlfriend Marcus painted me as, not the woman who wasn't good enough for the Cooper family, just me. Whatever comes next with this investigation, you gave me that gift. By evening, local news stations were reporting on the FBI investigation. The story of the Cooper family's potential downfall was spreading, and my Christmas celebration was being mentioned as the event that brought their victims together. My phone buzzed with interview requests from journalists, but I wasn't ready to speak publicly yet. Instead, I called Mrs. Henderson, who'd been quietly observing all the chaos from her own ranch next door. "Honey," she said in her wisdom-filled voice, "I've lived 82 years, and I've learned that the truth has a way of surfacing when the time is right. Your parents thought they could control everything, their reputation, their family, their crimes. But you hosting that dinner wasn't revenge. It was justice finding its way to the light." That night, as I sat in my great room where 24 hours earlier we'd been celebrating Christmas, I reflected on the magnitude of what had happened. I'd planned a dinner to prove that chosen family could be more meaningful than blood family. Instead, I'd accidentally orchestrated the exposure of a criminal enterprise that had been operating for over a decade. My parents had excluded me from Christmas because they were terrified of what might happen if I connected with their victims. Their fear had been prophetic. Bringing those people together had indeed destroyed their carefully constructed lies. But it had also created something beautiful, a community of people who'd found strength in shared truth and mutual support. The next morning would bring more FBI interviews, media attention, and legal complications. But that night, I felt something I'd never experienced in relation to my family: complete freedom from their influence and control. 6 months later, I stood on the deck of my Montana ranch watching the sunrise paint the mountains in shades of gold and pink, holding a newspaper that would have been unimaginable the previous Christmas. The headline read, "Cooper Development Corporation Executives Sentenced in Federal Fraud Case." Below it, a photo showed my parents and Marcus being led into the federal courthouse in handcuffs. The trial had been swift and decisive. The evidence gathered through my Christmas dinner guests, combined with the FBI's investigation, painted a picture of systematic fraud spanning 12 years. My parents received sentences of 8 and 6 years respectively, while Marcus got 4 years plus restitution payments that would bankrupt him completely. But the real justice wasn't in their prison sentences, it was in what happened to the people they'd wronged. David Chin had not only received full restitution for his stolen designs, but had been hired as the lead architect for the federal task force redesigning housing projects damaged by my parents' fraudulent construction. His sister Patricia became a key witness in ongoing investigations into construction industry corruption nationwide. Jennifer Walsh used her divorce settlement and the evidence uncovered during the investigation to expose her ex-husband's role in the money laundering scheme. She'd started a consulting firm helping other women navigate divorces involving financial crimes, turning her painful experience into a way to help others. Amy had perhaps the most satisfying outcome of all. The revelation of Marcus's involvement in criminal activity vindicated her completely, proving that she hadn't been a crazy ex-girlfriend, but rather someone who'd unknowingly gotten too close to family secrets. She'd leveraged her vindication into a successful career as a forensic accountant, specializing in cases involving family business fraud. Mrs. Henderson, despite being 82, had become something of a local celebrity after testifying about the community impact of my parents' crimes. She'd been featured in a documentary about corporate fraud's effect on small communities, and her apple pie recipe had been published in a national magazine's Recipes for Resilience feature. The most unexpected outcome came from Chef Sarah Kim, who'd prepared our Christmas feast. The publicity from the trial had brought her restaurant national attention, leading to a James Beard Award nomination and a cookbook deal. She'd insisted on crediting that Christmas dinner as the turning point in her career. As for me, my photography career had exploded in ways I never could have imagined. The story of how a Christmas dinner exposed a criminal empire captured national attention, and suddenly my wildlife photography was being viewed through the lens of someone who'd shown courage in the face of family pressure. Gallery showings that might have attracted dozens now drew hundreds. Corporate clients sought me out not just for my artistic skills, but for my reputation as someone who couldn't be bought or intimidated. But the real transformation was personal. The chosen family I'd created that Christmas night had become permanent. David, Amy, Jennifer, Mrs. Henderson, and the others had formed genuine friendships that extended far beyond their shared experience of being wronged by my biological family. We celebrated holidays together, supported each other through challenges, and created the kind of loving, authentic relationships I'd always craved. The legal proceedings had revealed the full extent of my parents' manipulation over the years. Every slight, every exclusion, every moment they'd made me feel inadequate had been calculated to keep me away from their business operations. They'd feared that my independent success and outsider perspective might lead to questions they couldn't answer. Ironically, by trying to control me, they'd ensured their own destruction. Sarah, Marcus's wife, had filed for divorce the moment the indictments were announced. She'd moved back to her parents' house with the children, and surprisingly, she'd reached out to me several times during the proceedings. In one of our conversations, she'd revealed something that completed my understanding of the family dynamics. "Madison, Marcus used to talk about you all the time," she'd confessed. "He was jealous of your independence, your talent, your ability to succeed without the family name. Your parents knew he resented you, so they played into that resentment to keep you isolated. They were afraid that if you and Marcus ever compared notes honestly, you'd figure out what they were really doing." The children had been the hardest part of all this. My nephew Jake, now 12, and my niece Emma, 10, had lost their father to prison and their privileged lifestyle to restitution payments. But Sarah had made a decision that shocked everyone. She'd asked if the kids could spend summers at my ranch, away from the media attention and family shame. "They need to know that not everyone in the Cooper family is a criminal," she'd said. "And you're the only Cooper who came out of this with their integrity intact." This past summer had been magical. Jake and Emma had helped me with my photography, learned to ride horses, and discovered that their Aunt Madison wasn't the family disappointment they'd been told about. I was the only Cooper who'd built something honest and lasting. Watching them gain confidence and joy away from their parents' toxic influence had been healing for all of us. The financial restitution had been substantial enough that I'd been able to establish the Madison Cooper Foundation for fraud victims, providing legal support and counseling for people who'd been financially devastated by white-collar crime. The first recipients had been several of my Christmas dinner guests, but the foundation had since helped dozens of families rebuild their lives after being victimized by corporate fraud. Standing on my deck this morning, 6 months after everything changed, I realized that my parents' cruelest act, excluding me from Christmas, had been the greatest gift they'd ever given me. By rejecting me, they'd forced me to find my real family among people who valued honesty, loyalty, and genuine connection. My phone buzzed with a text from Amy. "Annual Christmas Planning Committee meeting tonight? Mrs. Henderson wants to try a new stuffing recipe, and David has ideas for expanding the guest list." I smiled, looking out at the mountains that had witnessed my transformation from family disappointment to family patriarch of a chosen clan built on truth and mutual respect. This Christmas would be our second annual celebration, and word had spread about our tradition of welcoming people who'd been excluded, overlooked, or wronged by their own families. The irony was perfect. My parents had excluded me to protect their lies, but in doing so, they'd created a Christmas tradition that celebrated honesty and inclusion. Their legacy would be prison sentences and criminal convictions, while mine would be a community of people who'd found healing through connection. As I headed inside to start planning this year's celebration, I thought about the phone calls that had changed everything. My parents' desperate attempts to control the narrative had backfired so spectacularly that their story would be studied in business schools as an example of how family dysfunction and criminal behavior inevitably destroy each other. But for me, the real lesson was simpler. Sometimes the family that excludes you is doing you the biggest favor of your life. Sometimes being rejected by people who don't deserve you is the first step toward finding people who do. This Christmas, we'd be hosting 43 people at my ranch: fraud victims, divorced friends, elderly neighbors, and anyone else who needed a place where they were valued for who they truly were. The Cooper family Christmas would be better than ever, just not the Cooper family my parents had in mind. So that's my story. how being excluded from Christmas led to exposing a criminal empire and finding my real family among the people my parents had wronged. Have you ever had a moment where what seemed like the worst rejection actually turned out to be a life-changing blessing? I'd love to hear your stories about chosen family versus blood family in the comments below. And if this story of Christmas karma resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about family drama, justice served, and the power of building your own tribe. Share this video with anyone who's ever felt like the family disappointment. Sometimes being the black sheep means you're the only one with integrity. Thank you for joining me on this journey from exclusion to empowerment. I hope your own families, whether chosen or blood, bring you the love and respect you deserve. And remember, the best revenge isn't getting even. It's building something so beautiful that it makes their rejection irrelevant. Until next time, keep choosing authenticity over acceptance and truth over family loyalty.